My name is Jared Anderson, and I am coming to you today to give you an update on Open Liberty and Jakarta 9, so giving you highlights of what's going on there. I believe my screen should be sharing at this point, Elena. Okay, well, I'm going to go forward, assuming that everything is being shared and my screen is currently visible. Make sure just to be clear. Yes. Okay, so, nope, wait a second. I'll keep on going. So today, the agenda that we're going to go over is we're talking originally about Jakarta 9 and Jakarta 9.1, and talking about Open Liberty and what we're doing with Jakarta 9. And then I'm going to do some code demo as well, talking about using Jakarta 9 and helping you get your applications working with Jakarta 9. I'll let you know there is question and answer sessions, forums out there that you can post questions. There is a moderator that can come in during the presentation here and ask those questions. I will pause after each one of the slides if you have questions, and if he has any that have shown up, I will show those. I'll answer those questions as he asks them. Okay, so Jakarta 9 and Jakarta 9.1. So starting with Jakarta 9, Jakarta 9 finalized last year in November, and it was announced at the Jakarta 1 live stream back in December. And the Liberty team has been working on their implementation of Jakarta 9 over the last year plus. We'll go over some more of the specifics of where we are with that and where we are from an implementation perspective. You can see all the different specification links here. You can go over Jakarta EE and be able to see the information about what Jakarta EE 9 is all about. Obviously, we've talked about the past. This big change with Jakarta 9 is from moving from the Java X namespace and the jcp.org namespace for the deployment descriptors and for the code to using now Jakarta as the prefix for the package names of the classes. And that's the bulk of what is happening here with Jakarta 9. There is some deprecated functions that have been removed, but otherwise the bulk of it is moving everything over to the new namespace Jakarta. So what implementations are out there? What compatible implementations are there for Jakarta 9? Liberty is actually out there. We are actually marked as Jakarta EE 9 compatible. We are actually the first vendor out there. There's a nice blog post on openliberty.io that talks about us being first out there and the work that we're doing here, and gives a little more details of some of the things I'll go over here later in the presentation. When this chart was made originally, we were the only ones out there from a vendor perspective, but as of this week, for web profile compatible products, the Red Hat Wildfly product is also now out there from it being a web profile compatible. We also, from knowing what's happening in the community, expect that Wildfly will also be on the full platform as well coming in the near future. Okay, so Jakarta 9.1. So one thing, Jakarta 9.1 is kind of a follow-on to 9.0. They cut one thing major out of 9.0, and that was Java SE 11 support. So the only thing really happening from a Jakarta 9.1 perspective is supporting Java SE. There isn't anything new really from a spec perspective happening here, except for making the TCK work with Java SE and work with Java EE, or Java SE 11 and Java SE 8. So 9.1 does not drop 8 support, it just adds 11 support. So still you can run 9.1 on 11 or 11 at least, or also can do 8. So there isn't saying that we are dropping 8 support if we support 9.1. The timeline for this is mid-May. So they are finalizing everything right now. They're just finishing up the TCK this week. And we anticipate that will be coming out on schedule for mid-May. This is a little bit of a delay. Originally, we were looking at a March timeframe, but they ran into some issues with getting some of the updates done and supporting Java 11. So following the next section here is Open Liberty and Jakarta EE 9 and what's currently going on there and how we did what we did to become a compatible product. So we have a general strategy that we used with Jakarta EE9 support for Liberty, working with the open source communities out there to have a Jakarta EE9 version of their library that supports, previously Jakarta EE8. If they've done the work to convert that and just change all the classes over Jakarta EE9, changing the Java X's to the Java Jakartas, and making a new version. Very simple. If the open source communities are actually investing in the time to do that. That isn't always the case. Additionally, we have internal EE8 implementations within Liberty. So we are working to transform those existing EE8 implementations, whether they're internal or coming from open source, and transforming that code without having to have a new version of it in the product. So obviously we could duplicate all the source into multiple, into the repository, and do a search replace and all the Java X's to all the Jakartas, and be able to do it that way. That we didn't think was the most efficient and wouldn't be the best for our customers as well if they have to do the same thing for their applications. So moving to the next slide here, IBM took a lead based off of what I just talked about, making this easier. We created what we called a transformer project to be able to not have to have that dual maintenance. So if, in your application or within the product itself within Liberty, if we have a defect come in and we have to make a change to the code, we didn't want to make a change in two different places. That obviously doubles the cost of any maintenance that has to happen. So we took the lead in creating that transformation tool. It allows for rapid development of the actual product code of Liberty, but it also helps with transforming the test cases, so we don't have to duplicate test cases, and you get quick testing of this function as well. We shared this into the open source. We made an Eclipse open source project, so you can find it on eclipse.org. And there are other companies that are currently doing Jakarta EE9 support within their products, are also using this same technology to create their Jakarta EE9 offerings. Wildfly, for instance, is one of those that is making a use of this to not have to have that dual maintenance and to be able to get this quicker rollout without having to do so much code change. There's a blog post here at the bottom. It outlines how to use the Eclipse Transformer, how we used it, and how you can use it within your applications. And when I get to the Let's Code demo section here of this presentation, I'll show you how to do that. Additionally, within the Jakarta EE9 change, not only did the code change to have Java X to moving over to Jakarta prefix, the actual feature names changed as well. So when we had to move off of Java X, we also had to move off of the short names. So if you're used to things like JPA or JCA or Jax-RS, those are also all trademarked names by Oracle. So they required those short names to also be changed. With this change over to Jakarta 9, we ended up changing the Liberty feature short names as well to be the new names from a Jakarta perspective. So instead of JPA, for instance, now you'll see persistence, or JCA, you'll see connectors, EJBs, you'll see enterprise beans. Those are some examples of how it is. And I'll show again how you can use the transformer even to update your server XML to not have to do this all manually in your environments. There are a few exceptions there. We didn't do change concurrent to concurrency. We just left it at concurrent since we already had a name that's pretty close. It doesn't have that J name in it to make it an issue from a trademark perspective. And additionally, authentication authorization to line those up with app security, which is the security is the name of it, and from a Jakarta short name perspective, we added the word app in front of those. Also, authentication authorization is a little generic, so we wanted to make sure that it wasn't overloaded to be representing something else within the product. So if you end up changing and trying to do things manually, and you try to move over to using the new versions of Jakarta 9, you end up saying, hey, I'm just going to change EJB 3.2 to EJB 4.0 and restart my server XML and expect it to work. Well, it won't work. It's going to expect it to be Enterprise Beans -4.0. But it also gives you a very nice, helpful message to tell you that that's the new name. It'll be Enterprise Beacons 4.0, and the server will not start, but at least it will help you with making that transition to say, oh, that's what the new name is, without having to always look it up. Additionally, with our Jakarta EE9 implementation in Liberty, we did introduce a new Jax-RS implementation, or RESTful Web Services, which is the new name from a Jakarta perspective. Previously, with Liberty, we used the Apache CXF offering implementation for Jax-RS 2.0 and 2.1. With 3.0, we've changed over to now using REST Easy. The main reason for this is performance. So we have compared multiple Jax-RS implementations over the years, and the performance team for the web server performance team has noted that the Jax-RS offering did outperform CXF, and at this point we thought it was the right time to make that transition to a new offering, since everyone has to move anyway to redo their applications, etc. With our initial measurements of different applications using the RESTful Web Services function within the Jakarta 9 offering within Liberty, we're showing anywhere from like a 7 to 20% throughput improvement. Obviously, it depends upon how much of that application is using RESTful Web Services. So, that 20% is more like it's a simple application that's all it really doing is REST, right? Obviously, more 7% is where it's a mix. It's doing servlets, it's doing REST, it's doing JSPs, EJBs, JMS, etc. You won't see as much of an impact there, as high of an impact there, because you have all those other functions that are being used that are not showing a performance improvement. So what's next? Where are we going from here? So currently the beta is what is actually compatible out there. And you may wonder, well, first of all, will 9.1 work? Will it work with Java 11? So Liberty has supported Java 11 with the Liberty offering since beginning of 2019, for over 2 years now. So we have been testing with the TCK, that the early versions of it, the part that's just being released now. We're working on our certification documentations, actually this week, because they finally released the last, hopefully the final version of the TCK this week for 9.1. Everything we expect to go well with all the previous testing we're doing. We're actually expecting to put out their 2103 beta. It is exactly the same version we used for the Java 8 support with 9.0. So we already were technically supporting 9.1 with the offering we already had out there, because we already were testing it even without the CTS clarifying it. Additionally, so we have it in beta, so yes, all the functions are there to work from a Jakarta perspective. But there are additional value-add features in Open Liberty that also need to work with Jakarta 9. Some of those have been made to work using the transformer function. Some of them still need to have that work be done. So there's a mix right now, and each different release of the beta adds more in there to have that support. But that's the continued work that has to happen before we want to actually make this product generally available in a GA supported release instead of in beta. Additionally, the same thing applies over to WebSphere Liberty. The features in there need to also be updated in order to work with Jakarta 9. You may wonder, well, what about MicroProfile? Will MicroProfile work with Jakarta 9? And the answer is no. So if you have existing applications that use both the Jakarta programming model and the MicroProfile programming model, they currently will not work with Jakarta 9 after transform. The reason for that is because of the namespace change. So instead of it being everything that's in there currently is depending on CDI, is depending on Jax-RS, depending upon JSON. All those are depending on the EE8 version. So MicroProfile 4 depends upon Jakarta EE8. It can't support both. So the plan is for a MicroProfile 5.0 to come out later this year. That might be third quarter, might be fourth quarter. Somewhere after that, Liberty will also add a MicroProfile 5.0 implementation. And then you'll be able to use both Jakarta EE9 and MicroProfile again in the same applications like you've been doing previously in EE8. Okay, so next, what does this transformer look like? How does it run with using EE9, how easy is it to get over there? And I'm going to use a more complex application to be able to show this, and not such a simple thing, so that you can easily see that it does not have to be super hard. So first of all, here is the 21.05 beta that just went out on last week, Friday. There's instructions in here on how to get the beta. So I'm just going to follow these easy instructions here from the download page, clicking on the download page from that blog post. And I'm actually would be getting this particular zip file here. I've already done this. So I am not going to download, but this is where you can easily get it. I am not using this one. I'm actually going to use the all beta features. So I have EE8 and EE9 and EE7, any of the GA features plus the current beta features, all existing within the same download. So just because there is a namespace change with EE9 doesn't mean that Liberty stops supporting those other versions. You'll be able to run EE7 and EE9 or EE8, EE9 applications within the same install, different server XMLs, but same install, be able to run those with the same version of Liberty. So you won't have to go, well, if I want to use my EE8 version, I need to use 21.003, but if I want to use EE9, then I have to use 21.006. They will continue to be supported going forward. So the reason why I did this, so I can both run EE8 and 9 with two different servers running at the same time. That's why I pulled on that one. So this is that blog post that I talked about. So I'm going to actually, I followed the steps here exactly to make a git clone of the Eclipse Transformer repository. I have ran the Maven package. I have unzipped this particular jar, and as it was here, and now I will be able to show how I can easily run it. So first of all, after that, I've done all that. I downloaded DayTrader 8. Pretty simple here. Actually, I did a couple of ways of doing this here. I actually downloaded and ran the clone of the DayTrader 8. Again, this is publicly available. Everything that I'm doing here, you can do here. It is not IBM internal. So everything that is publicly available here in the open. I ran the clean the package so that I could get my configuration. I zipped up my user directory and I plopped it in the directory for my Eclipse, or for my Open Liberty that I downloaded. I did have to make a little change there to use the WAR file instead of using the loose application, but that was pretty self-explanatory on how to do that. So DayTrader 8 right there. Well, let me see. I'm guessing the server is currently not started. It shouldn't be, but I will make sure. It is, if I can actually type today. It's not running as expected. So here's where I downloaded 21.05 beta. Pretty darn simple. You can see in the servers directory, I have a default server. I'm going to delete the other one, default server 9, to show that I'm starting off from scratch. Nothing there. So I'm back to here. There's any other server besides the default server. So I've run this previously. That's why I had a default server 9. Let me start the server here. There we go. Server started. So starting over from DayTrader. So here's the DayTrader 8 application. Let's do some steps here. Let's log in. Let's get some quotes here. There we go. Market summary. Wonderful. Things are working as we expect. Well, let's take that same application and make it work with Jakarta EE9. Now, this is called Let's Code, but we're going to try and code in a way to not require us to do a bunch of code. So let's stop the current server. Oh, I can't type today. Okay, so going over here to the transformer. So like I said, I downloaded the transformer. I unzipped it. I had to create some additional files here. This is described in the blog post. By default, the transformer has some rules in it. that will transform most applications, but it doesn't do everything. And as we do and learn more things, we are making changes to the rules within the transformer and donating back to the open source. Within that blog post, there is information showing over to what we use actually in Liberty. Again, all of it is in the open, on how we transform our test applications, because we have to transform the applications and transform the test code to call into those applications to convert from Java X to Jakarta. But also, there may be some other things that had to be converted in there. Maybe the web XML has to be converted. The server XML has to be converted. JSP files may need to be converted. Those type of things. Excuse me. So let's go take a look first at the XML.properties file I created here. So the XML properties file for the transformer allows you to say, for this file, do you follow these rules to do a conversion. So I have here both how to convert the server XML, how to convert a web XML, and how to convert the particular JSP that is in this application. So let's take a look at each one of those. So let's first look at the server.xml properties. So at the top here, the server XML can have references to javax.jms or some other Java X ones in there. It is also outlined within that blog post. For instance, within the daytrader server.xml, there is a javax.jms topic talking about on how what particular connection, how you connect to it. That needs to be converted to, say, jakarta.jms to topic. Earlier, I outlined all those different, all the feature names would change. We actually don't have to do those manually to change those. So I just copy the table that was already in that blog post and put in the mapping here. This is the EE8 version of the feature. Here you convert it to the EE9. That can be done similarly for 7, right? If you have EE7, you can have that same conversion. So instead of web profile 8.0, we could have web profile 7.0 or WebSocket 1.0, or the different ones of EE7 can also be used instead to easily convert your current server XML. So I'm trying to make this super simple.
Hey Jared,
Yes,
the question did come up. You just noted that you could do it for 7 to 8 or 8 to 9. Can you? Does it have to go in progression?
No. So I could do this exact same scenario with a daytrader 7.
Okay. Great.
Application.
Thanks.
Yep, and obviously daytrader 7 application can run with EE8 features as well. So you can run an EE7 application with EE8 features, and you actually get some performance benefit there as well. So next,
cool.
Next, let's look at the web.xml properties. So within the web.xml, you'll see that there is a bunch of javax.faces properties that are put in a web.xml. This is very common for applications that make use of faces. So I have in here the conversion. If you see a javax.faces, convert it to a jakarta.faces. This is already going to be done within the class files, for any classes that it finds, any imports, but it's not necessarily done for the web XMLs. So that's why I have it in there. And then we have one additional one here, JSP.properties. So within there is an error.jsp. Within there, they have some strings that are looked up. So javax.servlet.error.message. These are the different ones. Unique. They should be converted over to the new Jakarta name instead. And so that takes care of the XML properties on how to convert XML files, those particular files that are kind of like XML. And then there is another property here that I've created called direct.properties. So this takes care of if there is a property, or if there is a word that's in a string, right? That's not a class that needs to have its package name converted, but it's in a particular string, or it may be part of an annotation value. So 2 of those that are in this application are going to be Q and topic. So these are just converting the Java X version of that over to the Jakarta version. Okay, so otherwise, those are the only properties I'm creating from a daytrader 8. We could obviously have a lot more properties that are, that would handle it for all applications, similar to what we're doing in Open Liberty for our tests. We actually have these properties duplicated there with a lot more than this, but I'm doing the bare minimum to show you how quickly and easily you can convert a EE8 application that's decent size to move over to Open Liberty. or moving over to Jakarta 9 with Open Liberty. So as we saw here in the tooling or in the instructions here, we can run the transformer. So this is the command line I'm going to use. Okay, copy that over. Paste that there. And then we're going to add some additional properties here. So if we show down here, you can see that there are some additional properties here. This is the direct property that I referenced, and also for XML, the different XML properties. So I'm going to show you how we would do that. So I'm going to actually start over at the server directory for the default servers. So 2105 WP user servers, the default server. I'm going to actually give the directory. It will find the server XML, it'll find the application, and it will convert them. And you have to specify a second option. I'm going to say, let's move it over to 2105 beta WP user servers default server. And like I said earlier, 9. I had created previous because I've run this to make sure that it works and went through a couple practice runs. And that's it. No, sorry, that's not it. Sorry. TF over to the XML properties, and then -td to the direct properties. That's it. It runs through the transformer. It finds everything. It converts it. So it actually gives you a nice little output here to tell you what it did, how many resources it found, how many changed, and you can actually see that it actually did a bunch of work here to change your application. All that happened within seconds. For a developer to actually change all the code, run builds, etc., it's going to take a lot longer. It took me, probably about 30 minutes to figure out these rules. But once I had them figured out, it was easy to go run this and be able to get it in a default server that actually can run that same application, a new version of it, that's Jakarta 9. So let's go back over to Liberty. I'll go over to servers, default server. Let me go look at the server.xml. So over here, like I said, this destination type used to say javax.jms. I didn't have to change it. It automatically did it within the transformer. Additionally, all those features that were listed here at the top of the server XML to tell you which server features to enable, all of them have been transformed. You didn't have to do it manually. You didn't have to do a typo and mess it up. You didn't have to know that, oh yeah, now it's called RESTful WS dash instead of Jax-RS dash. It already did that for you, and you don't have to figure that all out because the tooling saves you all that time. Well, let's start the server and see how it goes. Default server 9. It's thinking. Okay, server started. Let's go back over to our day trader. Let's hit enter here. And day trader's up and running, except now it's up and running with Jakarta EE 9. It's the same exact app, just converted over using the transformer. If it didn't convert the application, nothing would have started because we're using the EE9 features here. And so EE9 doesn't understand JavaX. So let's take a look and let's go and do the same thing to do it. Let's log in. Let's get some quotes. Let's look at a market summary. Everything is working just as it did with EE8, and we were able to do that conversion within minutes without having to do a ton of extra work within our application. Okay. I think that is everything I wanted to show from a code demo perspective, which leads to the next slide of questions. So I know that people have been asking questions over for both Neil and Elena have been tracking those, and I don't know if there is anything that anyone had questions that came up. Neil, I see you talking but not hearing you.
As always, I should unmute. Thanks, Jared. The question on YouTube that came up was when you were doing that conversion. and about the ability to go from like a 7 to 9, as long as you've set the appropriate rules. So that answered the question there. There don't appear to be any more on the YouTube side.
Yeah, and currently it looks like we have no questions from the Expert TV channel.
Yeah, I think you covered it really well. I found it very interesting that the speed at which you were able to do the conversion, get it up and running, that to me is priceless.
Yeah, and that's why we try to make that so make this transition. It's a hard transition to have every specification change and every line of code have to change that uses Jakarta EE to now have to actually change everything to use the new namespace. So we're trying to make that transition easy for customers as they move over to the newer versions of Jakarta.
Right. And do you see, you mentioned Jakarta EE 9.1 coming out with the JDK 11 support. I anticipate that even that there's very little impact in once they've made a change to the namespace. Determining which Java version they're going to run on should be fairly simple as well.
Right. And then, like I said, even with 9.1, Java 8 is still an option. So just because you're running 9.1 does not mean you have to make that transition to Java 11 if you're not ready to make that transition. So you can convert your applications and still use Java 8, even with saying that we work with 9.1.
Okay, great. Very cool. Wanted to thank you again for coming on and sharing with us today, and I'm looking forward to seeing more compatible implementations for Jakarta 9.1, just as you were showing Open Liberty, as a 9 and progressing through to 9.1. So good things in store. Now we can move forward with new features and new content within the Jakarta EE platform.
Yeah, and there's talk of an EE10. Whether that will still happen this year or early next year, that's being worked out. But obviously, we have to get through 9.1, which is just finalizing up, like I said, this month, and will be released again mid-May.
Great. Well, again, thank you, and I think we're ready for the end of the show.